So I said the key to building wealth is not how much you can work. You can't work your way to wealth. You gotta invest your way to. And all wealthy people, black, white, Asian, Chinese, they own a whole bunch of shit. The people who aren't wealthy is because they don't own nothing. You only have your money sitting in cash. If your money is just sitting in cash, realistically, you're becoming poorer every day. Some people actually fear success. Success comes with a lot, right? But until you can overcome that average reality that you live in, no matter what you're on, once you become comfortable there, it becomes average. Anyone can live in average. Everyone can live in mediocrity, right? Then there's those outliers who consistently push themselves to go to the next level. Knowledge is what gives us leverage in life. It's not about how strong you are. It's about what you can learn. And then how can you actively apply that? The more money they print, the more money that money loses value. It's the reason why the bank wants you to have your money there, so they can take it and use it and invest it so much and be like, hey, it's just sitting, I'm gonna give you 50 cents on whatever you had in it. Right. And so the idea of ownership was, we can just start owning everything that no matter if it's just a stock. Like, that's powerful, because if you can start owning the businesses that you now consume every day, you turn a one-time transaction to a lifetime of profit. And that was major for me, because if I go to the store and buy a pair of Nikes, that's a one-time transaction. In order for me to get something from them again, I gotta come back and buy another pair of Nikes. But if I own the Nike stock, long as I own it, it's a profitable vehicle for me. So that one-time transaction can become a lifetime of profit if I own that business. If I'm gonna buy Apple, if I know I'm an Apple user, if I know I got the phone, I got the AirPods, I got the MacBook, I got the PC, I excited when Apple's about to drop something, why wouldn't I own it? So he said, wealthy people stop trading time for money. They start making their money work for them, and they give value to as much value to people as they can. The caveat, we got a little deeper into that. He said, the reason why you give people so much value is because if you give them so much value, they'll never leave you and they'll always be there for you, and you will never need for anything as long as you give value to people. Wealthy people, first they get into stocks, then they start a business, and then they get real estate. As long as you believe in it, like you said, the only belief that matters is, what do you believe you can do? I personally believe that there is nothing I cannot do. And for me, it's all about impact, purpose, fulfillment. Like, the money is a byproduct of everything else. That isn't my focus. My focus is I have a knowledge and information that I know that can change lives. Not just one life, not just like lives. And so the way that you change lives is by consistently learning, finding new ways to put that information out there, being able to open up, being able to be vulnerable, because people need to connect. So like, just coming up in the streets, you only see the game from the lowest level. And you look at everybody else in part admiration and part like jealousy, because you see it and you're like, damn, I'll never get there. Right? And so the only way that I think I can get that is through sports or hustling. That's it. That's the only, or rapping. Those are the only three options that you have. And so you make a decision on which way you want to go. Right? And so you look at it from like, damn. And so I'm at the time like, man, I can't rap. Damn sure I can't play sports. So hustling is what I got. You limit yourself, and nobody comes along and teaches you anything different. The reason why people think wealthy people or people with money are sinister is because that's what you kind of taught in the hood. Like, you kind of taught like the people who really have money, like they did some wicked shit to get it. They did some backstabbing, cutthroat shit to get it, and you'll never get that, right? And so that same mentality now happens on a lower level, right? The hustling, the dope dealing. So now you think like, yo, I gotta just do sinister shit to get money. And then the people who are successful in the drug game, they're looking at the people at the top like, damn, I wanna be that. But the people at the bottom will never get a taste of that. And so now we just kind of living off ambition. And so now the people who are in the middle who working, they're like, oh, them people with money, they all crooks. Because being at the bottom teaches you to envy people at the top. It just happens. It's something that brews down there, right? It's kind of like you cook. I don't know if you had gumbo before, right? But it's kind of when you cook food, right, the base goes to the bottom. And so most people live in that bottom. never knowing how they would get up there. No one now believes that it's possible. Once you keep passing that down, you start accepting the lower levels. And then there's a few of us, or a few people who said, nah, I'm an outlier, yo, like, I'm about to go for it. And then whatever happens, I'm with that shit. You feel me? So for me, again, one of the greatest things that happened to me was my mother telling me, like, the world is raw and you gotta get this shit how you live. But I also saw my grandmother be a legal entrepreneur. So I saw it from both worlds. The greatest thing that ever happened to me was going to prison, because I was able to sit down and mature in that environment. Whereas had I been in the world, I'm not saying I wouldn't still be this, but the path would have been completely different. So while I'm in prison, I pick up a habit of reading. That was the game changer for me. On the streets, I never had the opportunity to just sit down and read because I'm always trying to survive. In prison, there was no longer a survivor mode there. So I went through a phase where I was reading like the hood books, and then I was like, man, I lived this shit already. No matter how many times you tell a hood story, it's still the same. Right. I've lived this shit for real. I don't keep need to read this. And so I used to get up in the mornings and watch CNBC. So mind you, people in prison, they love to watch The Young and the Restless. And so I would have to get up before them to watch like Squawk Box, Jim Cramer. And I'd be like, damn, these motherfuckers making all this money and they not risking their life. Something gotta change for me. Like something gotta change. And so I just started listening to them every day, and I started comparing it to the streets. A good business is just like a good hustler. A good business has great product. They have great clientele. A great hustler has a great product. He has consistent clientele. A good business on the stock market has what's called a moat, a competitive edge that keeps his competitors away. A good hustler on the street is gonna have that competitive edge where they be like, nah, yo, I ain't rocking with you. I'm gonna just wait till Trap come back, right? So there's the competitive edge. A good business has a good branding moat, meaning my name is good, right? So a good hustler on the street, yo, Trap got that blue magic. I'm good on you. Like if I can't get Trap, I'ma just go Trap. But Trap got that blue magic, that's what I'm rocking with. Branding moat, right? That's it. A great business on the stock market has more assets, more liquidity than debt. A good hustler on the street is, if you don't learn how to fund your business, if you're operating where all you have is re-up money, you're not gonna last long. So those components reminded me the same. On the stock market, in the world, if a company's paying tariffs, that's equivalent to a dude on the street going pay draft to go hustle in somebody's hood. Like you can't hustle over here unless you pay me draft. It's the same as a tariff. It's the same thing. Yeah. So once I broke the game down to a way that I can understand it, it wasn't about me just being brilliant. It was like, yo, how do I make the game winnable for me? So for me, it's always about how do I attain as much, it's always a challenge for me. How can I attain as much knowledge as I can, because I love learning. Like I love learning, but then how do I take that and be able to now reciprocate it or give it to somebody who may not understand calculus or trigonometry, but if I can give it to them in this way, they can say, oh yeah, I got it. And there's more people that struggled in the world that has become successful. So struggle has to become a language that I struggle. So that's the language I'm great at. So if I can break down things into a struggle language, now I make it the game winnable for everybody. And that's the goal, to make the game winnable for everybody who's bold enough to step into the batting cage. If you bold enough to do that, I was bold enough to jump in a goddamn 152-foot tank with sharks in Dubai. If you're bold enough to do it, there's an experience that comes from that. And that experience is so exhilarating, it will take you to the next level. Because now you keep chasing the next level of you. And that is when you start understanding life at a whole nother concept, when you start understanding that, yo, for the longest, I was just low-level living. I was low-level thinking. Now that I've been exposed to something, and I say this often, whatever you haven't been exposed to isn't your fault. Once you get exposed to it, you now are accountable for it. And so once I've become exposed to so much knowledge and information, once I expose you to it, you're accountable, because now you can no longer say, I didn't know. So the important thing for me to tell them is, start where you are. You build a house brick by brick. I mean, of course, you can get a house put together all at once. We live in that world
I get
now,
the idea.
right? But you build a mansion, you build an empire, you build it brick by brick. Like you start with $25. And we have to understand, RIP to Nip, man, the great, he says something that's phenomenal. He said, we on a marathon. We didn't get into our situation overnight, right? If we look back at our situation, you see you inherited that, whatever it is, that poverty, you inherited that mindset, that idea of scarcity, that idea that you don't have enough money. You inherited that. Building wealth becomes a revolutionary act because now you start saying, I'm gonna go against what I was taught, right? And so I said, by starting with $25, if you can do $25 a month, that's cool. If you can do $25 a week, that's cool. But what happens is, once you start understanding the power of how your money works, you'll start saying, yo, I don't need to do that, because that's taken away from this. That 25 will now become $50. Guaranteed. That 50 will now become 100 because you're gonna start doing more with less. The person who works out and sees that they drop 10 pounds in 2 weeks says, you know what, I'm gonna go a little harder because I know if I can drop 10, I can drop 20, right? I know if I see one muscle shape up, I know it's possible. The word possible is so powerful. Possible changes the game. Instead of it being impossible, we now say I am possible or I'm possible. That changes the dynamic. So the first mindset is saying, invest in your first stock. It don't have to be a winner. It doesn't have to be a home run. It can be an AT&T stock that costs $26 right now. It may not be the best investment in the world, but you started, right? And the great thing about anything is you can't be great if you never go to practice. You can't hit 81 if you never get in the gym. So just get in the gym and then find somebody who can teach you. Be dedicated to understand the process. Warren Buffett said he reads 500 pages a day. That lets me know I got a whole lot more reading to do. I'm an Audible book junkie right now because if he's the greatest investor and if he's reading 500 pages a day, I don't know how he does it, but in my mind, if he's still learning, I got a whole lot of learning to do. If somebody like Monesh Prabrai and Guy Spivey can pay Warren Buffett $1 million to have lunch with him, and these are already great investors who I look up to, if they can pay him $1 million to go have lunch with him, that means they're trying to learn. Their learning has to go to the next level. So if learning is the catalyst to everybody who's wealthy and successful, I can never be sufficient with what I know. And I think that has to happen too. We have to understand the power in learning and being educated, man.
Explain that basic idea of ownership for people that might not quite put it together that stocks really are owning that company.
Mm-hmm. So I actually got that term from Warren Buffett in one of his meetings. I want to say it was the 1995 shareholder meeting. And he said that owning a stock is owning a percentage of a great business. And so once I understood that concept, I understood that the key to wealth is through ownership. I took my time, I researched the Warren Buffetts and the Peter Lynch's, and I'm not gonna lie, in the beginning, that was like Chinese to me, right? This is a foreign language. And so what happened to me was it started reminding me of being in the streets. Everything about it. And I heard this term one time that said, the real gangsters are on Wall Street. The real gangsters are in the government. And I was like, damn. Started really getting into it, like, all right, yo, this makes sense. Like, damn, I see why they don't teach us this. This shit powerful. Like 70% of everything that we use and consume with our money is on the stock market. Mm-hmm. Like everything. So I'm like, damn, like, all right, cool. All right, it makes sense to me now. Like even the brands that we wear, Louis Vuitton, LVMH, third richest man in the world. Louis Vuitton owns Louis Vuitton, they own Dior, mm-hmm. They own Hennessy, mm-hmm. Moet. Yeah. Like, yo, like let's own it. And oftentimes the stock is cheaper than the product. So if I know that Waste Management is a company that's gonna be here forever because we aren't gonna stop throwing things away, why don't I own that company? Because I know everybody throws things away. And so now instead of me getting excited about Apple Lime being around the corner because it's a new phone, I'm like, yo, y'all about to make me some money, right? So when I hear a company like Waste Management has bought 40 acres of disposable land for another landfill, I'm excited about that. And another great thing about the stock market is, for me, it now makes me pay attention to the world. And so now I understand what's going on in the world. I started learning business cycles, market cycles. You know what I'm saying? Like, because now I can understand, yo, this is okay. Things are going out of business. Okay, we're in this cycle. Okay, people are hiring. Okay, we're in expansion cycle. And so now I took an economic class on my own without just understanding the world. And so you start understanding when something is happening in China. Okay, something happening in China, so I own Apple. Apple has 20% of their revenue in China. Okay, they might take a little hit right now. You know what I'm saying? So the stock market helped me start understanding how the world moves, the fundamentals. Right? And so that's important. In prison, we fight for like 4 hours.
Jeez.
Back to back. I'm just fighting one after another one. Like, we just fighting. And I go to solitary confinement. And at this time, all of these parish prisons is considered like one of the worst parish prisons in the United States of America, right? And I go to the cell and I meet this white guy. That was the turning point of my life. I get in the cell with him and I'm frustrated, like I'm kind of bust up. And he sees me and I guess he's in awe of the idea of so many Black people are in this position. He says something to me, he says, man, y'all playing the wrong game. And so in my mind, like, I'm frustrated. I'm like, man, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, bro, like, don't make me whoop your ass in here right now. Like, he's like, no. He's like, listen, bro, I don't mean no harm, no disrespect, but y'all, like, why? So I guess he's like perplexed by this whole dynamic of all of these Black men in here. And I'm like, man, what are you talking about, man? Like, this ain't no game, like, it's real. And so he says something, he said, that's the problem. Like, y'all don't even know it's a game. Wow. And so when he tell me that, I'm like, it's something about when you mad and you in the moment, but like something, when it makes sense, it hits you like a ton of bricks. So I'm like, what? He was like, man, listen, man, there's a game that's being played and you're playing a game that you can't win. For a minute, I just started thinking about the people who I knew that was in the streets. Everybody lost, everybody suffered the same fate. There was nobody in the street that I knew at 16 that won. Everybody I knew had either been to prison, been shot, got killed, their father, like everybody suffered the same fate. So my rebuttal to him is this: well, if it's such of a game and you know the rules, why are you in here with me?
It's a good question.
Right? He says, I'm in here, $2.8 million embezzlement. I paid $800,000 restitution. I kept $2 million. Have you ever seen $2 million? I'm like, man, get the fuck out of here. You fucking lying. So one thing about prison and in jail, you can show your paperwork. Like, you can lie all you want, but your paperwork tells me. So I said, let me see your paperwork then. So in New Orleans, I had a red band. So a red band means attempt murder, armed robbery, kidnapping, carjacking, violent offense. He has on a red and white band at the time. The red and white band means you're in federal custody. And it's crazy because in prison or in jail, like, if you get a federal band, that's like a hierarchy. It's like, you know something that we don't know, you next level, right? So he showed me his paperwork and it's right there in black and white. And immediately he got my attention. Because the red and white band makes me respect you at a different level at 16, but then when I see it in your paperwork, I had never seen $2.8 million written down nowhere. Right, so that changes my idea, like, damn. So tell me, how do I do what you do? I realized how powerful it was for me to, one, become economically, like, powerful in my mind. Because the thing about investing, especially in stocks, is that piece of ownership of everything that I use now makes me say, well, if I own that Apple, God, I don't care about buying an Apple phone. If I'm gonna wear Levi's and I'm gonna wear Timberlands, if I can own VFC Corp, then I own the stuff that I'm buying. I'm okay with that. Like, that subtle shift in my mindset changed everything for me. Because now I was after just owning everything that I consumed. In the beginning, that was my introduction to the game. Let me just own everything I consume and then I'll feel okay. And then one dope thing happened to me. In 2010, this after I'm home from prison now, right? I'm home from prison. I'm back in the streets hustling. Because even though I have the information, I don't have the money, right? And I'm like, well, shit, I gotta get the money. My door gets kicked in 2010. They get 8 pounds of weed, $10,000. Yeah, by the cops. 8 pounds of weed, $10,000, a 223, a 40 with extended clip and a beam, and 100 X pills. So the cop tells me, you ain't learned your lesson. Like, you ain't learned your lesson. And I was like, damn, that was some dumb shit, right? Like, I got knowledge, I got information, but I still fell victim to the same shit that everybody around me knew. So therefore, the knowledge that I had wasn't powerful because it wasn't applied. So I was fortunate, God bless me. I wound up getting found not guilty because it's called fruit of a poisonous tree. So they kicked in my door, but they didn't have probable cause because they stopped me in my truck, didn't find nothing on me. So they went to my house, kicked the door in with no search warrant. So now everything you find is null and void. That's purpose, man, because that's not supposed to happen, right? I'm thankful for that all the time. And then, but that put me in a situation because now, even though it cost me $60,000 to beat that charge, I don't have no money. So now I get into the robbing game. So now I start robbing dope dealers, right? Because an OG told me that a person who works a job every day, they not a part of this game. So they not fair game. You don't mess with them. But somebody who sells a nickel bag, he fair game. A shark don't care if it's a tuna or whatever. If you in the ocean swimming, you fair game. And so I started robbing dope dealers at the time because I was like, yo, if you want, you can't call the police. If you want to see me, I'm with it. And I got in a situation where I was good at it. Me and my partner, God bless his soul. And then one day I almost got killed. And I go to my partner and I say, bro, I'm out. Like, it's a done deal. But when they kicked my door in, something happened. So they took my truck, they took my money, but they didn't mess with my stock account. It didn't freeze, it didn't. I said, hold up. They don't think I'm smart enough for this. In the book 48 Laws of Power, it says, never underestimate your opponent. And at that point, I realized that America underestimates us. And it's from a class issue because we've never said we're capable of doing this. It's a game we just didn't play. So I said, okay, God, what do you want me to do? All I know how to do is be a hustler. And the voice from 1999 comes in my head and says, you're just playing the wrong game. Like, all right, cool. So I went to telling my homies, like, yo, check this out. Instead of us just blowing the money, we gonna wear the Fendi anyway. We gonna wear it anyway. Let's just own that shit too. Like, let's play the game both ways. So my homies really wasn't getting it. So I had to say, all right, yo, like, the education, the knowledge is the fertilizer to your wealth, right? So as the education and as the knowledge changes, so does the compensation change. Because now I can have conversations about different things. So I really just locked in on it. And I started teaching my homies, and I was like, all right, how do I make it realistic to them? How do I make them tap into it? So the second thing was like, yo, check this out. None of us can beat the game. Everybody I knew had the same problem. Nobody had a solution. How do I now stop looking like the problem and start representing a solution, right? So I can't talk to everybody, but I can talk to street dudes. Like, I can talk to them. So I'm like, yo, check this out. If you go do a bid, which is gonna happen, what do you come home to? Like, you gotta get back in the streets. You gotta get it out the mud again. So if you had money invested for you, when you come home, you got money. You don't gotta ask nobody for no handout. What if you go do a bid and what you've made the sacrifices, you took the chances, what do your family have? Like, so let's start thinking bigger picture now. What happens if you get killed in the street? Because most of us either go to jail or we get killed. What do you leave your kids? Like, let's start making it make sense. So the goal for me was to never tell you get out the streets. It was to start saying, yo, let's start thinking about our family now. Like, let's start thinking about something bigger than us. And nobody never came to us like that. So that was my whole avenue. And so the Wallstreet Trapper was me just saying, let me turn the trapper word into something positive instead of always being about dope, instead of always being about hustling. And I knew my voice for who I was talking to. I never wanted to talk to nobody else. For me, the understanding the basics and the fundamentals. Like, once you start understanding the fundamentals, you give yourself power. Because you now understand, like you said, you see how the machine works, right? And so most people look at the machine and marvel and say most people look at the stock market. 98% of the people who I know look at the stock market and say, yo, that's not a game I can play. I'm staying away from it. And so the way it's set up is, the world is set up, well, listen, cool, I don't even want you to play it. Just give me your money, I'll play it for you.
Right.
So when we look at like banks, like we understand that banks don't necessarily work in our favor, right? So banks only give us 0.05% interest on the money we have there. Well, we can get 8% just by putting our money in an index fund. So why would I just sit my money in a bank and let the bank make all the money? Because all they're gonna do is invest the money for you. So they now operating as the plug. They operate now as the man who, I'm gonna front you this, I'm gonna make my money, I'm gonna take the cut, I'm gonna give you just enough to keep coming back. I'm gonna go to the plug. Who is the plug? The stock market, right? And so once I understood the fundamentals of like, the most important thing too, is we don't understand how money works. That's a whole different language in its own. The relationship with money in my community is you make money just enough to pay bills. And so once you get tired of paying bills, you say, you know what? I need to treat myself to something, right? No matter if I gotta go in debt, no matter if I need to treat myself to something to take this misery away. So you treat yourself to something that you can't afford at the time, right? But it makes you feel good in the moment. And so because it makes you feel good, you say, you know what? I'm living. This is a reprieve from everyday struggle. Let me get back on the hamster wheel. And so the sacrifice now becomes hard because now you're saying, I gotta work and never get that reprieve. I'm not willing to do that, right? And so that's the mindset comes in and say, everybody around me had the same problem. No one represented the solution. So if I don't change something, I'm only gonna end up like everybody else I know. Somebody has the solution somewhere. There's too many people out here living the life of their dreams that I'm watching. They know something I don't know. And the only thing that they had was access to a different type of information.